Hey there everyone! Today we're going to be taking it back a little bit. Lately the tutorials that I've been doing have been more focused on individual interactions or in small pieces within Pixate. But the way that I got started doing this was by building out the entire iOS 8 lock screen. And if you haven't seen that, you should definitely check it out. It takes a while, but it's awesome to build. So we're going to go back and kind of pay an homage to that and build out an entire app, or most of an app, and we're going to do Twitter. So it's going to be broken up in a couple pieces, I think two, and just like the last ones, it's just so it's not too terribly long. I recommend doing both of them. But for this one, we're going to do the main screen of Twitter of someone you're following's profile. So in this case, we're following Google Design, who is awesome, and you should follow them. And we're going to build out this entire thing. And when we're done with it, you're not going to be able to tell if you're on real Twitter or the prototype. So let's get started. All right, so to get started, we are going to build this on an iPhone 6. So make sure that that's the canvas size that you have selected. And I've placed in the assets for from the main screen package. Get that from the asset packet off my website. You can get the link in the description. If you're already there, just click on that download asset package, place those in, and then we'll get started on it. So we're not going to actually place any layers right now. What we're first going to do is build out some of our structure. So the first thing that we're going to do is just make a full canvas layer. This is going to be the shell container for everything, since we're going to be building multiple pages. It's good to have this all in one thing. That way we can move everything if we need to. So we'll just name this main page. And then we are going to duplicate it and rename the duplication tweets. So we're going to put all the tweet stuff in there. It's going to hold our container, our scroll container cover photo, but it's also going to have some loose elements in there as well. Then we're going to duplicate that one, and this is going to be our scroll container. So we'll call this tweets scroll, and this is going to be down at 60, the top of it at 60, but we want it to only go to the bottom of the page, so we'll pull that up so it's at the bottom. So it's going to be 607 pixels tall. And then we're going to make one more layer. This is going to be for our cover photo. So it's full width, and it's 125 pixels tall. And we're going to make this transparent and rename this cover photo. And we want both of these to be inside of this tweets container. So just like this is our hierarchy. So now the first thing we're going to do is make this scroll work. We're not going to place some of these other little assets in there right now. We just want, since everything's driven based off of the scroll, we're going to get that working first. So first we'll place this header in here. Let's come and find it. And we'll drop this in. And this is going to be 60 pixels down as well within the tweets scroll. We'll place this in here. Within it, so within this container, it's 60 pixels down. And then we're going to make another container in here. We'll pull down. And this is going to be at 269. It's going to be full width. And this is going to contain all of our tweets, and they're long. So we're going to make this 6,173 pixels tall. Now this is just because I wanted to put a lot of tweets in here so we can just scroll and scroll and scroll and get a real feeling of this app rather than just a couple. So if you're rebuilding this with a different profile, you can make this whatever size you want. It just needs to be the full size of the assets within it. We'll rename this to content container. I'm going to put the header above this. Okay, so within the content container, we can start placing our tweets. So I'm just going to place what we have are just the normal tweets. the media tweets, so the photos and vines, and we also have favorites. So I'm just going to start by placing, we'll just place all of them in here. Now, these are broken up the way that Photoshop lets you export. It wouldn't let me export all 6,000 or 12,000 pixel size of this thing, so I had to break them up into two pieces. So if I've got tweets 1 and tweets 2 in here, I'm just going to drag this down, scroll down this canvas, and align it. I can align it visually right here. That should be good. Yeah, let's line that up. So I have this one, tweets 2, at 2446. And we'll place those within the content container. Then we'll get media. We'll come back up here. Place media body 1. Just roughly place it right here. Media body 2. Let's make sure. So we want tweets body 1. See, we want those to be at 0, the tops. So I have it at 5. Make sure that's at 0. I'll move tweets body 2 up. So now if it's within that container, its position is at 2112. Place media in here as well. So I want media 1, body 1 to be at 0, and it's 2759 pixels tall, so this one can be at 2759. And that should line them up. Let's make sure. Yeah, that's not right. We want this to overlay just a little bit. I'm going to place this here. Cool, so that's in line and it looks right. And then we'll grab the favorites body. Now if I place that in this container, just want it to be at 0. 0. Cool. And now we're gonna tell these things to reorder when we tap on this the filter menu. But I want tweets, the normal tweets, to be on top at all times, so I'm going to reorder those like that. Okay, now we can minimize this. And then we should come into here to tweet scroll. Let's add a scroll interaction to this. So now this whole thing scrolls as 1. Cool. So now we'll put the cover photo in so that we can get an idea of our location, because this pins at the top, so we want to make sure that it's pinning in the right spot and our tweets are in the right spot. So if I'm on the cover photo, this is going to be the shell container, and I'm going to come and drop a few different assets in here. I'm going to just put the cover photo. And I can just roughly place this right at the top, and I'm also going to put cover photo blurred in here. So in Twitter, when you scroll past a certain point, the cover photo kind of blurs, so we have 2 assets for that. And what we're going to do is just fade out the cover photo on top so that the blurred one comes in. And then I'm going to come back to this, the shell container, and I'm going to add a move animation to this. I'm going to rename this to move with scroll. And it's going to be based off of the tweet scroll's scroll position continuously to final value. So I'm going to set this from 0 to begin at 0 to 60. And I'm going to tell this to move to its top to -60. So I want this to go up with the scroll a little bit, just like this. But then once it reaches this point at 60, it's going to stop and pin up here. Just like that. And then I'm going to add a scale animation to this. Now this is going to be, this is going to set the photo to scale when we pull down so we don't disconnect. So we'll name this scale with pull down. And it's going to be based off of tweet scroll's scroll position, and it's going to go continuously with rate. I want to limit the scroll range on this. It's only going to do it at 0, and I'm just going to put an arbitrary number in here, however far I pull down, so I'm going to say negative 500. And if I select this top anchor point, I can set this rate to negative 0.008, and that'll make it so that it doesn't move faster than we're pulling, just like that. So let's add some more of the details in here. We want to get our status bar and this back button and the tweet and search button. So we'll come to the assets. Got the status bar white right here. I'll just place this in here. We're just going to drop some of these in the general locations, and we'll put them in the right spots in a second. So we'll put the search bar or the search icon, the right icon, and the back icon. Now, so I want these to be lined up in a container, but I don't need to make a full width container. So this is one little trick is to just make a little layer. You can make it invisible. Just move it up here so it's in the corner, out of view. But now I can place all of these icons in here, and they'll be easier to manage. So I'll just rename this profile icons, and I'll place all of these in here. And the status bar doesn't need to be in there, it can be on top. So the status bar, I'm going to put this at 6 and 5. And then if I put these icons in here and make sure that profile icons is at 0, 0, I'll put the back icon at 10 pixels in and 32 down. The right icon at 342 and 32 pixels down. And the search icon is going to be at 306 and 32 pixels down. And I'm going to place this within the main page right here, right on top of the tweets. Okay, so now these guys stay here, which is perfect. Okay, so now let's place our profile cover or photo in here. If I go down and select profile pick timeline, I can roughly place that in here. I'm going to come and place this within this tweets container, and it's just above cover photo. And this is going to be placed at 9 pixels in and 104 pixels down. Now it doesn't move, but what we're going to do is we're going to tell this to move up. It's going to scale as we move, just like with Twitter, and then go underneath. So we're going to add a few interactions or animations to this. We're going to add the scale, we're going to add a move, and then we're going to add a reorder. So on scale, we'll rename this scale with scroll. It's going to be based off of the tweet scroll position, continuously to final value. And thinking back to what we did with the cover photo, we're going to use the same scroll range of 0 to 60. We're going to tilt the scale by factor, and I'm going to set the anchor point to this bottom center one. And I've calculated this out. I'm going to have this go down to 0.68 with the scale. Then with the move, I'm going to call this move with scroll. This is going to be based off of the tweet scroll position. This is going to go continuously with rate, because we want it to basically stay this bottom point to be anchored in its spot as we scroll. And I'm just going to set the rate to -1. So now we can see with this, as I scroll, the bottom, it's the padding or the distance between Google Design and the profile picture is not changing, but it's scrolling, and right as we get to 60, which is exactly what Twitter does, right as we get to this point, it stops scaling and goes down. So then we just need to do a reorder and tell this now, don't be on top of the cover photo, now we got to go under it. So we'll just select this reorder layer, and it's also going to be based off of tweet's scroll position. This is going to be with duration of final value, and we're going to have to put a condition in here. So what that's going to be is we need to get the layer ID that we're going to be using. So it's tweet scroll. We can copy that. Come back over here, paste that in, and we're going to say if it's content Y. That means the top of the content that we're scrolling, once that reaches or is greater than 60, then we can reorder this. So we're going to say place behind cover photo. And it needs, when you reorder, they need to be in the same level of the hierarchy. Keep that in mind. So since cover over photo right here, we're just going to be switching this like this, and we'll do it instantly. So now when I do that, if I go up, now it's under. But now if I pull back, it's still underneath. So we're just going to add another condition, and we're going to switch it so that it goes backwards. So we can just copy this up here. All we got to do is change our caret from greater than to less than, and then we'll just set this to bring to front. So now once we got that, if I scroll up, it goes underneath. If I pull down, it goes up. Perfect. Okay, so now we should probably put in our tweets menu, the tweets, media, and favorites, and get that set up. Now that's also going to do something similar where when we're at a certain point, it's going to stop moving, it's going to pin. So we'll place that in right now. So I'm going to come into the tweet scroll. I'll just click on header. I'm going to add a new layer, that way it automatically reorders. And we're going to have to adjust this in the properties. So I'm going to set this so that it's at 0 and 0 pixels in, it's on the left, and 224 pixels down. I want this to be full width, so I'll change its horizontal size to 375. I'm going to make this 46 pixels tall. And then I'll make this transparent. Now I'm going to rename this layer to menus. And this is where we're going to put those assets in there. So we'll come back over into our layers panel. And I'm going to bring in menu 1, menu 2, or menu 2, and menu 3. So let's place these in roughly. And so each of these assets you can see are different tapped states for these menus. And now we'll just place them inside of our new layer, inside of this menus layer. Just like that. We'll make sure that these are all placed at 0, 0, since we roughly placed them. And we'll rename these. So let's name menu to menu tweets. Menu 3 is menu favorites. And menu 2 is media. And we can reorder these appropriately. We'll just make sure that tweets is on top, since that's the way that it starts. And we're going to come back to these, but we're going to add a reorder layer to each one. We're not going to set what happens to them now, but we're just going to prepare for that. So if we click on menus, we're going to add a move animation to this. So right now, it's going to scroll entirely with our stuff, and it's not going to stop. I want this to pin. Once it gets to about here, I want it to pin and hold. So I'm going to name this move animation to move with scroll. And it's going to be based off of the tweet scroll position. And this is going to be continuously with rate. Now what I'm going to do is limit the scroll range for this rate. So I'm going to end up telling it that when we're at a certain point, to start to move with a negative rate, move backwards with our scroll. And what that's going to do is just keep it in place. So I've measured this out. Once we get to about 219, I want it to start, and we need to put in an end number, so we'll just say 9,001. It's always over 9,000. And so now once we reach to that 219 point, this places, it anchors, and stays. So now as I'm scrolling, what's happening is this is actually moving backwards at the same rate that I'm scrolling, so it looks like it's just stagnant. Well, it is stagnant. And then once we get back to that 219 point, it's going to stop doing that. That's why we put in that scroll range and go back to where it belongs and follows down. So now I can scroll all the way down here, and it pulls. So now we got most of this working the way we want it to work. It was fairly simple, actually. There's a lot going on, but it's not a lot. Well, it looks like there's a lot going on, but it's not. It's actually really good design by Twitter. But we're still missing a couple things. So I want this cover photo to fade out once I get to about here. So we'll come back over to this, to our main cover photo. And we're going to add a fade animation to this. Now this is going to be fade based off of the tweet scroll position, as almost everything is. It's going to go continuously to final value. And I'm also going to limit the scroll range for this. And we're going to set this to work to start at 97 to 127. Now the way that I got that was really just by measuring. So what I did is in my sketch files, I measured the distance for where this Google Design Top gets to here. That's basically how they're doing it. If it gets to up to about here, it starts to fade. So trial and error with that one. I'm going to set this, make sure it fades to 0. So now once it gets to about here, it starts to fade. And then after a few pixels, it goes completely out. Just like that. Sweet. And then one more thing that happens with this cover photo is once you get to here, the name of the profile you're looking at goes away, and then out from underneath comes some information. So this will say Google Design, and when we're here, it's going to say however many tweets they have. It'll also say how much media there is and how many favorites they have. So we'll place those in. Come in here, I'm going to place tweets header, just down here. Just place that in roughly. Favorites header and media header. We'll put these all within the cover photo container. And they're all going to be on top of each other. So they're all going to be 174 pixels down. And just to make sure they're centered, what I did is I dragged them in. But favorites header is going to be 128 pixels in. Media will be 128 pixels in. And tweets is also going to be 128 pixels in. And so now they're all over each other. And the order doesn't matter because we're going to tell these to fade based off whichever of these menu buttons we've tapped. But first we're going to set the move animations for these. So we'll place a move animation on all of them. And they're all going to move continuously with rate. They're all going to have the same values. So I'll say based off tweet scroll's position, move continuously with rate. I'm going to limit the scroll range, just like I did with this menu here. I'm going to tell it from when I'm at 60 to 147. And this was figured out just kind of by trial and error as well. I just went through it and figured out the range of where it works. It'll start to move at -1. So once I get to this -147 or 147 pixels up, they'll stop moving. I'm going to do this with all three of these. We'll make sure that the rate is -1. Great. And then just so that we don't see these things in here, because now they're showing up, I'm going to click on this cover photo layer up here. I'm going to turn clipping on. And that's all we need to do to make this work right. So now if I start to scroll up, now we're going to see all three of them right now, but we'll fix that in a minute. Once we get to about here, start to come up, and then once we reach 147, they stop. If we keep going, this still pins, and this is exactly how we want this to look. And because we limited the scroll range, we don't have to tell it to go back. It'll automatically go back itself once we do that. So that's pretty much it for these animations. Now we just need to make our feed work properly and tell these headers to work based off of or in conjunction with this menu. So the first thing we have to do with that is to just make these menu buttons work. So I'll come into menus. So minimize this. I'm actually just going to duplicate this and rename it, but I'm not going to keep the same layers in here. I'm just duplicating this because it's in the same spot and it's already got these move with scroll animations in it, so I don't have to redo those. So I can just delete the duplicated assets in here, make a new layer, and I'm just going to drag it, and we can roughly place these just so they kind of fit over here. We're just going to do this first one. I'm going to put it, make sure it's actually in the menu buttons container. I'm going to name this one tweets button and add a tap interaction to it. Then I can duplicate it twice. Rename this second one media button and this third one favorites button. And I'm just holding shift and arrow and moving them to their proper spot. I'm going to resize this one. Perfect. So now I've got these buttons on here. Just minimize that. And we'll go back to the cover photo and we'll make these work based off of these buttons. So tweets we're starting on the tweets page, so I'm not going to turn down or mess with the tweets one right now. I'm going to turn down the opacity for favorites and media, and I'm just going to have to add some fade animations to them. So I'm going to add 3 to each. This first one is going to be fade out for tweets. Second one is going to be fade out favorites. And this one will just be fade in. That's what we're going to do for all 3 of these. We're going to have one that tells it to go out for each of these buttons, and then one to fade in when its button is tapped. So I can come in here and say when tweets button is tapped, fade to 0. Just going to do this instantly. For the second one, when favorites button is tapped, go to 0, do it instantly, and this will make sure it's faded in when the media button, because we're on the media header, is tapped to 100 instantly. All right, we'll do the same for favorites. 3 animations, So this will be fade out media, fade out tweets, and then fade in. So we'll set media based off the media button tap, 0 and instant. Fade out for tweets. On the tweets button, make sure you're not selecting tweet scroll, like I have done twice already. And then fade in, we're doing favorites, so when the favorites button is tapped, it'll go up to 100. And we'll do the same for tweets header. Let's minimize this. Add 3 animations. Name this fade out favorites. The order of these doesn't matter. Fade out media. And then fade in. Assign their values. Awesome. So now let this reload. So if I pull up, if I tap on media, it turns into the media one. If I tap on favorites, it turns into that. There we go. Okay, so now let's make the menu work the way that we expect it to. This is going to be really easy. So remember, we looking at the wrong layer. We came in here and we added our reorder layers. We're going to do the same thing that we just did with these cover photos. It's going to reorder based off of when they were tapped. So for menu, for tweets, I'm going to say when the tweets button is tapped, bring to front, and it's just going to bring it to front within its container. For media, when that's tapped, just bring that to front. And then for favorites, we'll bring that to the front. So if I tap, it looks like they're working. And then I think all that's left with that is to do the same thing with our tweets. We want whichever tweets we're looking at to appear in front. So I'm going to add reorder animations to all of these. Okay, so for the tweets one, when the tweets button is tapped, even though it starts in front, we're going to make sure that it comes in front no matter what. Say bring to front. Do that for both versions of it. Okay, for favorites, favorites button is tapped. Bring to front. And then for media, when it's tapped, bring that to front. Great. So now we can see these do their things. Scroll, and it'll start to change, even within the scroll. Now, one thing to take note of. It's really difficult to, I've tried, and there are probably ways to get around it. It wasn't immediately apparent, and I didn't want to take up too much time in this and for such a small detail. But the favorites asset, you can see right here, it's broken because it's not as long. The media one, it looks like it's cut off. That's because these are all sized to match the bottom, the length of the main tweets page. So what I was trying to do is set the scroll container to change sizes based off these, so that if I reach the bottom, it would just anchor and stop and look normal. But I was unable to do that because it would squish. I think this is just kind of a problem Pixate has right now, and I'm sure that will be fixed later on. But for now, I just tried to match the content height. Unfortunately, Google doesn't have enough favorites to even go down to this height. So I could come in and adjust, and you can do that and change it, but it's not super terribly important. All right, and the last step before we're finished with this is we just need to put in our nav bar. How could we forget that? So I'm not going to place this within the main feed. I'm not going to bring that into this or this main page thing. It's going to be on its own, and that's because in the next tutorial, we're going to open up a tweet detail. So, and that doesn't actually switch. It doesn't change positions. So I'm just going to place it at 0, 622. It's going to constantly be on top. I'll place it below the status bar just because I like to always have the status bar on top. There we see now we have our standard normal Twitter feed. So that's it for part 1 of this tutorial. In part 2, we're going to open up a tweet detail and see an individual tweet. And then we're also going to create Twitter's photo viewer. We're going to open up the profile photo here, this pic G. And speaking of Twitter, if you want to follow me, my Twitter is @JaredLodwick. And if you do that, you will get regular updates for these tutorials. I put them out often, along with other various things that may or may not be that interesting to you. But I would appreciate that. So look for part 2, and I'll see you next time.